terrific Tuesday morning to you and yours. Welcome again to Market Insight on Souk News Television. Today, October the 8th, 2024. I am David Chiedu. What's more can I tell you at this moment than, of course, we're jumping straight into the conversation with regards to issues that concern the market and by extension concern you and I. Think about a nation such as Nigeria that is blessed with a plethora of livestock and what we have been doing with it so far. It's pretty curious, considering the fact that we still aren't part of the world's top 5 as far as exporting and exporting and producing is concerned. But of course, we're going to take a look at that and more, seeing as we've just gotten a $500 million loan facility from the World Bank to, take care, if I should use that term, of our livestock industry. So the industry, as you were, in Nigeria plays a very vital role in the country's economy in terms of employment and food security. Now, Nigeria is a significant producer of livestock with a total population of over 20 million heads of cattle, 130 million sheep, and 100 million goats. Now, the industry is primarily driven by small-scale farmers and pastoralists. Major products of this particular sector include beef, milk, cheese, and hides, which we use for our clothing as you wear, or other accessories, which are consumed domestically and also exported to other African countries. Now, to boost production in this particular sector, as I mentioned not long ago, Nigeria has gotten a $500 million loan facility from the World Bank that also supports commercialization and resilience. Now, the project, tagged the Livestock Productivity and Resilience Support Project, runs from 2022 to 2028. Now, this particular fund is being deployed to improve various aspects of the livestock value chain. Now, to discuss how this particular project would affect us as a people and the country's economy at large, today we're being joined on the program by Mr. Iliya Umar. He's the CEO and the MD, Ilmar Integrated Services, a livestock production and breeding service and general livestock consultancy. Mr. Umar, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Mr. David. I'm very...
Right. And also joining us this morning is Mr. Emmanuel Abuhson. He's the CEO, Tremma Agro Services Ltd, and the Executive Director, Pan-African Institute of Agribusiness Management. Good morning, Mr. Abuhson. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, David, and it's always nice to be here. Thank you.
Now, we're going to start with you, Mr. Iliya Umar. Let's get your thoughts on this particular development. Mr. Umar, you are an animal farmer, so to speak, or a pastoralist, as the case may be, because your firm offers services in that regard. So we're getting a huge sum from the World Bank to, boost the activities of our livestock sector. So, Mr. Umar, let's get your thoughts. What do you make of this development?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. David, once again. It's very fortunate enough that I happen to be one of the resource persons from one of these states that were selected for this implementing this project of HealthPress, that's the Livestock Productivity and Resilience Support Project. It's a very welcoming development, of which I know part of the objective of this project is improvement of our livestock productivity, commercialization, and resilience of the targeted value chains, which include the cattle, the sheep and goats, the poultry, the pigs, of which Nigeria as a whole, is a country where we are blessed. And one of the Nigerians' comparative advantages lies in the livestock sector. So I think by these developments we just got from the World Bank, it's going to be a very fast track, a booster to the livestock industry.
Abuhson, if you can hear me, let's come to you for your own thoughts with regards to, what we're doing with this. Now, the sector, the livestock, beg your pardon, sector is a very, very important one as far as, the economy is concerned. That's where we get our meat from, our dairy, and as I mentioned earlier, leather for all sorts of accessories and all of that, things we even wear, as the case may be. Now, what are your thoughts on the immediate impacts on the economy and by extension, the contribution to the wider economy in terms of growth and, development?
A big challenge for farmers, live breeders and all of that still boils down to financing. Now, this is a breakthrough for farmers. The funding is now being made available. So we have funding now that farmers can be able to access, then also to scale up production. And coupled with the fact that recently we have been having a level of inflation, access to credit from commercial banks when it comes to the interest rate is becoming alarming. So now this fund it's available to boost the production. And when production is being boosted, then we can talk about having benefit in terms of the output, because now we have funding that can fund the input. Now output can now be assured. So we now have assurance that yes, there's money for us to go there's money for us to go into production. If this funding is being utilized effectively, we'll be able to have it's a massive scale of production. And then when there's scale of production, we can now start looking at addressing the shortage we have. Then we talk about importation, because why we have importation is we have a high level of importation is because we have low production, and the infrastructure, we have poor infrastructure. We have many challenges that which most of us know, that from infrastructure down to credit system to insecurity, headers and farmers crisis and all of that. So when there's funding to address this, because funding is a very major game changer in this industry. So since there's funding to address these challenges, we can now start having assurance of production. When we have production, we can now start addressing food insecurity, and then also other value chains that livestock addresses, like leather for belt, for making our shoes, our belt, our bags. We have dairy products. So we can now start talking about children feed. Feed in the market currently, it's very expensive, but until we start mass producing, until our demand can outweigh our supply, we cannot be talking about reduction in terms of cost, in terms of pricing in the market. So I think this is for me, it's a good is a progress in the right direction, if it will be utilized properly. So this LPRES program, for me, is a progress in the right direction. If it's effective, my emphasis on effective use of funds.
Now, I'm going to stay on that thought of yours, the effective use of the funds, or the optimal use of the funds, as the case may be. Now, animal husbandry and advisory support services, as well as animal health services, were part of what this particular fund, was supposed to take care of, as the case may be. As a matter of fact, each, has an allocation of $40 million. Now, regarding this, is there a way to do it better? Now, you said that the effective use of it is concerned, and that's where I'm going with this. It's one thing for funds to be allocated, is another thing for the funds allocated to be able to adequately and effectively solve the problem or problems for which they were allocated for to start with. Now, I say that considering how poorly run our husbandry activities in this part of the world has been. What's your take on this?
All right, so I quickly want to point out two things. When we create institutions in Nigeria, these institutions are meant to address most of these challenges that we confront as a nation, confronting as a nation. So the institutions such as the funding institutions like the Bank of Agriculture, Bank of Agriculture is still quite underfunded. Bank of Agriculture is not highly digitized to address loan that is loan repayment, the sustainability of this loan, and all of that, these functionalities. Then again, we also look at too many replica of activities. Bank of Industry is giving loans to Bank of Industry is doing the job Bank of Agriculture is meant to do. Then we also have NISA. NISA is also there giving loan. That now NISA even have a microfinancing bank, and there's Bank of Agriculture. Now we need to start addressing. We need to start funding the institutions that we have created to serve the people, that cuts, first of all, that bridge the linkages between farmers and the financial institutions. That is one. Then number two, for us to be able to have the effectiveness of this, we also still come down to the use of data. Data collection in Nigeria is still very, very poor. So we need to address the issue of data. Now, then associations. We have national associations of sheep and goat development of Nigeria. We have association of poultry farmers. We have association of cattle rearers. We have the Métis Allah groups. All these commodities, all these livestock, they have their associations fully registered with the Ministry of Trade, Investment, and Industry as their umbrella. Now, these associations need to be strengthened. One, capacity building. For them to be able to effectively harmonize the data of their members, not just going to do, how will I put it, rush hour jobs. Because there's funding now, there's $500 million now. Wow, there's funding for organizations. Let's start putting ourselves together. Let's start putting names of families and brothers and all of that, for us not to have effective data collection. Now, if our data is correct, it directs the flow of how we make accurate budgeting. At least we reduce assumptions, we reduce presumptions, and budget correctly for effective use of this funding. So these associations, we need a bit of human capacity building for the executives, then also for their members. That is one. Then number two, how to fund these organizations effectively, not just as individuals, but as clusters, as members of these organizations, each of them guaranteeing themselves, because this is loan, it's not grant. So we're not coming to a point where we're giving them loan that they're not going to repay back. These loans are going to be repaid back. So they need a bit of financial literacy too. Financial literacy need to be put involved. Then high use of technology. Our farmers are still low. Their acceptance, them accepting technology is still very poor. It's still very poor. So we need to put that together. Now, also, we now have extension service workers. The Federal Ministry of Agriculture has a Federal Department of Extension Service, which need to be integrated, need to be harmonized to work together. We need to do a whole lot of cross-sector collaborations. One of the challenges of livestock farmers have, just like crop production farmers, is also issues of climate change. When you have low rainfall, especially for breeders, for cattle, So we need to integrate these sectors together that give us that give us good weather forecast, which is NIMET. Farmers had to now draw a plan on how to make this work. When you look at this $500 million, a part of the budget also funding goes into pasture farm, which is the food now for livestock, the food for livestock to mitigate the risks between the farmers and the headers. So when we go into food production for animal food production, which is also a value chain in agriculture that still need to be invested into, we're going to have less cattle roaming around the streets, roaming around farms, bringing insecurity. Where let me also put either political undertone or something. When we have addressed the infrastructure and structures that enables livestock farming to go effectively well, like we have in other countries. We have it in Rwanda, we have it in New Zealand, where there's ranch. A cattle rearer uses ranch to rear their cattle, not roaming around the street. We'll be able to address a bit of insecurity. And these structures and this structure will enable us to know that yes, the funding being injected into this is actually addressing what it ought to address.
Interesting points you've raised, especially where you talked about the harmonization of some of these organizations or these associations as well, or as it were. And I'm going to come to you, Iliya. He's talked about, as Emmanuel has talked about, a number of things. I can't particularly enumerate all of them, but just the salient points he raised are these organizations. I'm going to ask you, seeing as you play in that sector, and somewhat closer, if you like, to some of these organizations, given the nature of your discipline, as it were. What role would you say that they have contributed, the likes of MACBAN and the rest of them? What role would you say that they have played, rather, as opposed to contributed, with regards to, the effectiveness, if you like, or the seamless activities of the value chain?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think one of the roles these organizations play is creating awareness to the target farmers, especially the farmers. If you look at, just like you mentioned, the McBan, I know there was a time they run a program of awareness, creating awareness to farmers, especially the husbandmen, concerning securing loans to banks. For a typical farmer, maybe let me say a Fulani, his thought is that whenever he goes to the bank, he can't secure loans, and they find it very difficult to organize themselves as a cooperative. So I think McBan played a role in organizing them, creating awareness for them to form cooperatives, because whenever a bank wants to give out loans, one of the first criteria is you must have a cooperative. Whereas some of our farmers don't even know these cooperatives exist. They don't even know how to form the cooperative. So they created that awareness for farmers to form cooperatives. And by statistics, I tell you, 15 years back to date, if you go around, you have numerous number of cooperatives of farmers, of which through that, some do secure loans easily from all these loan institutions. And secondly, is the market. They also create market for the farmers, easy market for the farmers, because let me say for the poultry farmers, some of them, their own marketing is just within locality. But by attaching themselves to an organization or a cooperative or an association, they can easily have connection to a marketer or an off-taker who, let's say, for example, a farmer is in Kano State. He is used to Kano State as just his locality, selling his poultry within Kano State. But by joining this association, he will have an advantage of linking up to an off-taker who is living in Port Harcourt. And maybe the off-taker in Port Harcourt has more capacity of taking his poultry beds more than the off-taker he has in Kano. So I think these two basic roles, these organizations play to the farmers.
Back to you, Emmanuel. Earlier also you mentioned farmers had a crisis, which we're going to get to in a minute. But some experts have clamored for the enhancement of the livestock value chain. As a matter of fact, as far as these facilities or this particular $500 million facility is concerned, it also has its own allocation, about $275 million. Now, what does this mean for stakeholders and their concerns in the sector with regards to, the overall product deliverable or product output, as you were, deliverables and profitability? Stakeholders clamoring for the, overhauling, if you like, or the enhancement of livestock value chain activities, which I also mentioned. There is a $275 million allocation from this particular $500 million facility. In your view, as a stakeholder, what does it mean for stakeholders like yourself in the sector and their concerns with regards to the end product, of their activities and or the overall deliverables and profitability in the sector?
All right. So there's a lot of gap in the value chain, especially for livestock. Now, from a cow, that is cow, sheep and goat, poultry, and all of that. Now, the reason why we're having this is because we are eating our naira, especially the skin, which we call pomo in Nigeria. So when we have infrastructure that translates this skin to other finished products, it's going to be a very good one. And what do we need? We need industries. We need industries that can convert these things to raw material. Like, these are raw materials that can be processed into primary or finished products. In Rwanda, there's a particular time in Rwanda that eating cow skin is a crime. You can't eat pomo in Rwanda. You eat the beef. So when they skin it out, so they know that, yes, this is hide and skin for profit. So we need to stop eating our naira. We need to stop consuming. We are consuming our naira, we are consuming everything, we are consuming capital, we are consuming profit. It's just like Nigerians are like, sorry, let me not say Nigerians. Some of us are like a startup that eats both capital, profit, and everything, just like that. So for the money that has been injected into the agricultural value chain, we need to look at the value chain we want to be known with. Is it skin? Is it hide and skin? Then we develop this particular area to a point we become known with it. There was a particular time we were known with cotton, the Ariwa cotton in Nigeria. Nigerians were known with cotton, but we did not develop our textile industry to the point that it can address our clothing issues. So we started importing clothes wrappers like Hollandia, Hollandis, and all of that, forgetting about our own homemade products. Even today, even at the automobile industry, we're still having issues at, okay, ours is more expensive, ours is cheaper, ours is not good, theirs is better, and all of that, especially when it comes to quality and all of that, quality assurance and all. So we need to now sit down as stakeholders. Which of this sector do we want to develop? If we want to do everything at the same time, we might end up doing nothing. Where do we want to? Let's map out areas we want to develop. If it's for the skin, hide and skin, let's develop that area. Do we not want to be known for the higher exporter? Want to be taking the lead in exporting beef? Let's get to know that. In poultry, do you want to be known for this? Let's develop the value chain. Now, there's a value chain where we have not dealt with so much yet in Nigeria, which has to do with the food meal for these animals, especially cattle. When you are farming mulatto seed, when you are farming mulatto, a grass for that cows consume, it is even more profiting than rice farm. What you make from a mulatto 1 hectare, it's like times 4, 5 of what you make from rice farm. But this is an area that many of us have not explored yet. So the value chain in livestock is wide. Is wide. We just need to start looking at it as stakeholders. Where do we want to major into? What is our focus? What do we want to achieve? Then we invest there heavily, and this investment must be done properly. we have the Bank of Industry to come in, we have the Development Bank of Nigeria, then we have the Bank of Agriculture. This loan is already there. It has to be structured to the fact that beneficiaries should not struggle to have access to these loans, because funding like this, the good part of it is it is affordable.
Okay, I think we may have gotten a little glitch there, technical glitch there. We're going to get Emmanuel back on to continue his thoughts. You're still watching Market Insight, by the way, and this is Souk News Television. And Emmanuel just said something right now, which I'm thinking you may be scratching your head and wondering, I mean, if we went on ahead to start processing every part of livestock, well, particularly cattle and the other ruminants, that we might have it difficult to eat our favored pomo, as the case may be, and you're wondering, what if I don't have pomo in my ewedu, or I don't have pomo in my, in my eforiro and the rest of them? What's is it going to be complete? Because in most cases, when you have the regular beef, even chicken and the rest of them, it's incomplete when there is no pomo and the rest of them. So yeah. Emmanuel seems to think that we have been eating what we should be, quote and unquote, selling or converting into more profitable, commodities, as the case may be. But he does indeed raise a very, very valid point, that one. And then, of course, talks about the funding of it all, and even talks about a particular seed he calls, I think he mentioned Milato, if I'm not mistaken, if I didn't get my wires crossed when he was talking about it, saying that it is more or less uncharted waters, and very many farmers, or very many of the stakeholders in the sector, haven't particularly paid attention to it. And if we did pay attention to it, it will be the next big thing, or our next cash cow, pun intended, as it were. But we'll take a look at more of these when we come back from the break. You're still watching Market Insight, and we're talking about the livestock sector, livestock industry in the country, and how it can be boosted through the $500 million World Bank loan facility that Nigeria secured in recent time. We'll take more points as we move on with the conversation very shortly after the break. Stay with us. Thanks for staying tuned. You're still watching Market Insight here on Souk News Television, and we're talking about the country's agri sector, specifically the livestock industry, where a $500 million loan facility, courtesy of the World Bank, has been given us, and we're looking to boost that particular industry to see what contribution, or how much contribution that it can make to the country's wider economy. We've been talking with two gentlemen who are stakeholders in the sector. CEO MD, Ilmar Integrated Services, Livestock Production, Breeding Services and General Livestock Consultancy, Mr. Iliya Umar, as well as the CEO, Tremma Agro Services Ltd, Executive Director, Pan-African Institute of Agribusiness Management, Mr. Emmanuel Abuhson. Emmanuel, if you can hear me, I would have loved for you to continue your thoughts, but unfortunately we don't have that much time. So I would just have to move on from here to Iliya to get some of his thoughts as well. Now, Iliya, another part of this particular loan facility caters to crisis prevention and conflict management. We're talking about $100 million allocation from that $500 million total loan facility, as you were. So it'll cover natural resources as well, and pasture management, as it were, which the latter, of course, has 70 million. Now, recently we saw the Nigerian government, creating the Ministry of Livestock Development to address things like farmer-herder crises or farmer-herder conflict, as Emmanuel alluded to earlier. Now, this, sometimes when it does happen, it leaves a lot of carnage in its wake. How do you see all of this particular project, making an impact in this regard?
All right, Mr. David. As we all know, Nigerian livestock has been plagued over time of conflict of herdsmen and farmers clashes, inadequate infrastructures, and underutilization of economic potentials we have in the country. So I think these projects, if what Mr. Emmanuel have been making emphasis on, effective utilization, will definitely mitigate this issue of farmers headers clashes, in the sense that we already have an existing grazing reserve of which our forefathers have inherited. But because this sector, the grazing reserves have been neglected, uh, it is assumed in the country that this grazing reserve doesn't exist. But I assure you, if this project will be put to action and key into make more input into the sector, definitely there will be zero or none issue of these herders and farmers clashes. Let me put it this way. Just like Mr. Emmanuel said, I've been thinking about this feed, the animal food feed, we call it feed when it comes to animal food in human distinct aspect. So this feed, especially the pasture, if, for example, a farmer is given a chance to allocate or provide maybe a 0.2 hectare of land, and through these interventions, government supports him with a very effective and improved variety of these feeds. Definitely, I don't think there will be need for a farmer to carry his animals from so place to so place. In his own locality, within his own environment, he will have enough feed raised for his number of cows or cattle or sheep or goats, the poultry, whatever. He can utilize it within his own environment and raise it without taking this. And what we have been telling people is, if you just look at it, even the animals, if you take animals from point A to point B, the feed they must have taken from point A, instead of that feed, the energy to be utilized within the animal, they will now be taken to point B. So that trekking or that journey they carry out from point A to point B, the feed they must have taken in point A must have been utilized throughout that trekking. So instead of it to be utilized for body maintenance and what have you. So in this project, like the Express, like I said earlier, I happen to be one of the resource persons of the project, where they provided these farmers with training. And this thing, we're not talking about just providing them with loans, but the updated or modern way of raising their animals, modern way of doing this, because we are talking about boosting the agriculture. You can't just boost it without even keying into the modern technology of raising these animals. So I think it's very important. If the project will be very focused and be very consistent in seeing that pastures or ranches are established through giving support to all these farmers to establish their pasture. Because a livestock farmer, the key of livestock farming is feed. So if you have a pasture well established, there won't be need for you to carry your animals from point A to point B. That will even take you to taking your animals into someone's territory. Thank you very much.
All right, now let's come back to you, Emmanuel. Can you hear me, Emmanuel?
Yes, sir. My apologies, please.
No worries at all. Now let's talk about what we make from the sector. it accounts for about 10% of, GDP, as you were. That's 10% of the agriculture GDP. It also serves as a primary source of employment and contributes about 36.5% of the protein consumed in Nigerian households across the board. Now, looking at where we are revenue-wise, we aren't particularly making enough, mostly because, we aren't producing as much as we consume. For example, if you look outside in most European countries, as far as last year was concerned, some of the countries with the highest, export numbers, as you were, as far as dairy is concerned, we're talking about New Zealand, just like you mentioned earlier. We're talking about Germany. We're talking about the USA and the Netherlands. In that order. As at last year, they were the highest exporters of dairy. Now, if you're talking about live animal exports, you're talking about France, Canada, the Netherlands, and Germany as well. And if you're talking about beef, you're talking about Brazil, India, and the USA as well. Now, across the board, you see that the USA is there. You see that Germany is there. You see that the Netherlands is there. So now these countries have thriving economies. And comparatively, we also have livestock, right? Particularly cattle, which, over 20 million heads, as you were, according to the Agri Ministry. Besides cattle, we have other ruminants, running around here and there that we see on the streets. Now, the question is, and in some cases, we even fight, just like Iliya has said, we even fight for where to graze these ruminants, as the case may be. Now, considering how much of these, livestock that we have, why are we not amongst the list of the top exporters as far as, first of all, the continent is concerned and the world as well is concerned, considering our poor, position, our poor stance, especially when it comes to non-oil exports? What are we not doing right, Emmanuel? Emmanuel, can you hear me?
When it comes to
All right. I think we lost Emmanuel there. We lost the connection rather with Emmanuel. Iliya, you wanna weigh in on this particular one?
Yeah. From my own perspective, I think we're losing like one or two things. First thing is that actually we are so deficient in this, especially in the laptop production, deficient in the laptop production because we have not invested enough. I show you in a country whereby they have more of their attention in the laptop industry, have now become the best exporters of these livestock products. Just like, for example, of which I don't always want to make these references, the Botswana and Kenya, who are within the continent. Botswana happens to be the number one certified, one of the number one, if not one, but one of the number one certified exporters of beef for China and United Kingdom, if I'm not mistaken. So how do they get into where they are now? It's because they have invested heavily in this sector. And secondly, the breed of animals, the category of animals they raise, they have worked tirelessly to improve their breed of animals that provides enough milk. We're talking about in Kenya now, you have an average cow that is producing 20 liters per day on average, 20 liters per day. Whereas in Nigeria, you hardly get a cow, an indigenous cow that produces 4 liters per milk. So I think these two keywords is key points is where we're missing. The breeds we are raising, are they sufficient enough?
Okay. Thank you, Iliya. Because of time, let's quickly get some thoughts from Emmanuel before we call time on the program this morning. Emmanuel, are you there now? Can you hear me? I don't think we can hear. I don't think he can hear me still. The gremlins are really eating up the connection between us and Emmanuel. But let's also, move forward here. Iliya, I'm going to round up with you now. Let's talk about storage of some of these things. Now, I reckon that cold chain facilities are primarily, used in some cases. Now, give us a sense of what the situation is in the sector. Also, tell us a little bit about what obtains and, how these issues of storage can be addressed.
Yeah, actually, truth be told, when it comes to cold chain, especially in this livestock sector, is very poor. I can tell you, we're out in the field there. We're seeing what actually contains in the field. So it's a very, very challenging issue when it comes to cold chain, starting from the animal product processing, the storage you're talking about is a very challenging issue. But I think with proper implementation or a very well organized approach, this thing will be mitigated. Looking at the improved technology of solar powered machines and what have you we have now. So even if we're talking about the cost of maybe energy generation, okay, generating these machines, I think now we have solar powered technology that can ease these high cost of this investment. So it's a very challenging issue, but with this approach, I think definitely we have a solution for it.
Very much, and that's where we're going to call time on the program this morning. We do appreciate you joining us, Iliya Umar, MD CEO, Ilmar Integrated Services, livestock production and consultancy or general consultancy service. Many thanks for joining us, and also thanks to Emmanuel, who, by the way, has just joined us back. Emmanuel, let's get your final thoughts on, the way forward, as he were, because you've missed out on quite the chunk of the conversation. But just in the next minute or thereabouts, particularly less, if you can, give us your final thoughts on, why we're not producing as much as we should be producing, with the comparison I made earlier, and how we can better our lot as far as this sector is concerned going forward, in very few words.
It's been raining here, so power and other alternative power supply has been very crazy. So I will say that one of the reasons why we are still very low in production compared to other countries is, one, let me use the milk from milk, one of the dairy products, milk, as an example. In Rwanda, you have milk collection centers where they collect this milk from the cattle.
All right, and on that note, we will call it a day on the program this morning. Many thanks for joining us. We've been talking about Nigeria's $500 million loan facility, courtesy of the World Bank. Now, this is intended to boost the agri sector, specifically the livestock industry, as it were, which is a thriving one and supposedly, a cash cow. But for some reason, it's still contributing much less than it should actually contribute at this point in time. And the loan in question is split into, tiny portions to take care of specific aspects of the livestock industry to boost production and enhance resilience within the next couple of years. How that pans out is left to be seen. But of course, across the board, and amongst stakeholders, the common concern is the lack of attention to feed. Essentially, the former drives the latter, being, the survival, so to speak, of the livestock sector, or the growth, if you like, of the livestock sector. And that's indeed a very pertinent issue for the authorities to take note of. And again, as I mentioned, it's one thing for the funds to be released, is another thing for them to actually be channeled towards adequately addressing the problems for which they were set out to address to start with. But of course, other fringe issues, including awareness, or if you like, capacity, a lack of capacity, amongst the livestock farmers in the hinterlands who don't know any better. And of course, getting in tune, or as we say, getting with the program as far as urban or modern techniques to pastoral farming or livestock farming is concerned. Very important that these things, these messages be taken to folks like that who are, in the hinterlands and don't know any better. And of course, the crises of farmer-herders conflict has been a thorn in our flesh for the longest time. Of course, it's been mentioned again by our guest. Of course, it does need to be addressed by the authorities. It fuels insecurity. And of course, where there is insecurity, there's very little by way of growth and development that can come out of that. But of course, with this loan facility, we're hoping, as I mentioned earlier, that it would indeed meet the needs of that particular sector, talking about the livestock industry. Many thanks for joining us. As we close, we take you straight to the Forex markets, give you an update on what it looks like today, October 8, 2024. On the official markets, the Naira dollar trade is 1,646 Naira, the pound sterling 2,185 Naira, the euro 1,841 Naira. On the parallel market elsewhere, it's 1,675 Naira, 2,270 Naira, and 1,870 Naira. That's, of course, on the parallel market. And that's what it looks like in the country's Forex market today. Many thanks once again for watching the program this morning. Stay tuned for the news update at the top of the hour, and do well to follow us across our social media handles. They're showing on your screen. I am David Chiedu. Market Insight returns tomorrow at the same time. Do have a wonderful day.